Welcome to the Property Corner with myself, Rowan Alexander. On today's episode, I'm going to be chatting about recent developments in our political space and this GNU that's been announced and how this is going to impact the property market or potentially shift it and change it over the next 5 years. So GNU, governments, property, land expropriation, all of these things were up for discussion again with the recent elections, national elections that we had. And subsequent with the announcements of the GNU, we get a lot of questions. And a lot of questions about how we see this impacting the property market, whether it's positive, negative. And I think general sentiment has been positive. But one of the things that I want to touch on is been the long-term trend. And the long-term trend has been semigration to Cape Town. I mean, I've been in the industry since 2011. And ever since that time, semigration has been one of the very topical things in the property market. More so over the last sort of 8 years than maybe the earlier 8, and I think back to periods when maybe 3 to 4 out of every 10 buyers in our business came from outside of Cape Town. We currently sitting at a level where about 20% of our buyers are from outside of Cape Town, and sometimes moving up in specific projects to 30%. But generally, I'd say, as a rule of thumb, about 20% of our buyers are coming from outside of Cape Town. That's cyclical, though, and I'll touch on certain elements that might have increased or decreased that over time, and maybe you'll be able to reference or remember them. But bearing in mind, I'm on the receiving side of this immigration, so the things that I will highlight will be things that happened locally, but also elsewhere in the country where we immediately saw people, an influx into Cape Town. So the first time the DA, I think it was Herman Mashaba, that was elected as the DA mayor of Johannesburg, I think it was at the time, he brought hope to that Gauteng market. And immediately that impacted the semigration specifically from Gauteng. Because people living in Gauteng, they had hope, they believed things would change. And as that broke down over time, we saw those sort of levels normalizing again. We saw people packing their bags and coming to Cape Town again. So there was a bit of a halt. At the same time, when the Western Cape experienced the drought, and the prospects of moving to Cape Town with no water, weren't very great, and you also saw a slowdown in semigration. Then at one stage, the DA went through a bit of rocky ground internally with Helen Zille and Musi Maimane, and those sort of workings out. And that also made the Cape less desirable to be in because there was some uncertainty in the market. And that's been sort of precursors in a political environment that have directly affected the property market, as well as things like natural resource, like water availability. Similarly, over the last 2 years with disruptive riots, especially in KZN, flooding in KZN, those were things that also directly impacted. I mean, the moment those things happened, our phones started ringing specifically out of KZN. So we've seen that, because we are the centralized hub to which people are coming, we've been able to identify those. If you're sitting in an area where people are leaving, you can maybe relate to 1 or 2 or 3 of those events. But on the receiving side, we see all of that sort of holistically. That brings me to this GNU and how that will ultimately impact the property market. Because I think you need to look at it holistically again and say, well, if we look at the past political changes and how that impacted, that helps us understand going forward. If we have a repeat of Herman Mashaba and that period where the rest of the country becomes more desirable because there's some form of hope that things will be turned around in the region in which those residents find themselves, whether it be KZN, whether it be the Northern Cape, whether it be Gauteng. If there is hope and belief that service delivery will improve and that circumstances will change in those areas, then the Western Cape will become less desirable. And that would ultimately mean that your surrounding provinces and your other provinces will experience good capital growth, good rental returns, because demand will stay in those provinces. However, if those break down and the GNU and the provincial governments and the local government service delivery drops and they're constantly in fighting and confidence is lost, then people will look back to the Western Cape like they have over the last 10, 15 years, very much as a island of stability. And that would probably continue the trend in which we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years. It sounds pretty obvious, and I think it is pretty obvious, because I think these moves are really that simple, is that while there is hope, whether it be in the Western Cape or elsewhere, people aren't going to move. If they believe that their circumstances are going to change, and if they believe that there will be positive outcome, they will stay. If that the moment that sort of hope is lost and that foresight comes under pressure and there's grass is greener on the other side, we will see sort of back to semigration or high levels of semigration continued, as long as the Western Cape stays stable. Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantees in life, but I think this maybe puts into perspective probably the biggest factors that will affect the property market. Yes, we are all rooting for foreign investment and for economic turn and for interest rates to come down and ratings agencies to improve. And all of these things, if there's good governance, will indirectly affect the property market. But I think the most direct effect to the property market, especially where we find ourselves, will be the movement within the local borders and semigration. It will either be a case of semigration will continue or it will slow down. But I think that would be the most directly related effect on the property market. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. Share your insights, where you find yourself, and whether you agree. Are you living in the Western Cape? Have you come from another province? How are you finding that? Or are you in another province and are you thinking about moving? Or have you got the confidence to say, I'm staying? Let us know in the comments. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to our channel. You can listen to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or follow us on the video version on YouTube. Hope you've enjoyed it and hope to see you around again.